that's another thing that we talked about. If you end up losing Adolis Garcia, we're still waiting to see or hear what the results are there, is he has an 8.7 arm rating this year, which stands for outfield arm runs above average. So how many runs did you save above average? And that's the best among all right fielders, which is obviously a huge position when it comes to arm strength. So we've talked about him being in the Gold Glove conversation, and we've talked about how good his arm is. Well, there's a great example right there. The best right fielder in baseball at saving runs above average. So excellent work right there. But I think defensively, you look across the board. This is a Rangers team that, fair to say, last year we did not think was good defensively.
Right.
Yeah, you had a couple pieces in the outfield, like the Joey Gallos of the world were decent, right? And
a couple of years ago.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, Adolis was a good outfielder. You knew that. Tavares, a good outfielder. But everything else, you were just like, and you knew you had up the middle pretty good.
Sure.
Yeah, but even last year, there were times where Seager, you were wondering, like, oh, man, like, how much longer does he have at shortstop? And he just really improved this year from last year.
And I'm really glad that you said that, because I think he's one of at least 3 people that come to my mind that have really improved. And Corey Seager has absolutely gotten better. And I realize the way they call errors is a little more lax than it used to be. But last year, the Rangers had 96 errors. This year, 57. The only team that had fewer than that, the Diamondbacks at 56.
Interesting.
So you're talking about, look, there's a lot of different ways to measure this, but you're talking about 2 of the best defensive teams. So I think Corey Seager has gotten better. I think Nathaniel Lowe has gone from one of the worst defensive first basemen to being above average, just not very good. I know the very good argument is obviously one of the finalists for Gold Glove. So I think he has made a huge improvement. And then I feel like we've talked about this throughout the year. Josh Young's defense has been better than I could have possibly imagined this year.
With the bat of Nate Lowe last year, is a 300 hitter, and the lack of defense, then the trade-off, which is better defense, but not necessarily the same bat as he had last year. You make that trade every time, right? Like, you're pretty happy with the fact that you have a pretty deep. Well, he's not as actually right now. He's been such a poor hitter. It's kind of the last part of the season. You're like, what's wrong?
I think I hear what you're saying. I would just say most teams, whether this is right or wrong, will just go, I'd rather deal with, and I know he didn't have a good offensive year, I'd rather just deal with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. not playing good defense and just crushing it offensively. I'm not saying that's the right decision, but I played with Mo Vaughn. I played with Dimitri Young. These were all-star hitters. They were definitely not all-star first basemen. So a lot of teams have to, in a weird way, make that decision. But it is Nate Lowe, the way that he's played first base, especially in the playoffs this year. I don't think there's been at least 4 or 5 plays that I don't know if he scoops the ball last year. I don't know, if he – now, look, is he perfect? He's not perfect. He made a bad throw to home plate the other night. It mattered. It wasn't the worst throw in the world, but it also wasn't an accurate, good throw. But it's rare that your first baseman has to make throws to kind of have a good defensive game. It's more about his glove work at first base, and he's done a tremendous job here in the playoffs with his glove work.
Yeah, and some of those, I have to admit, that Seager double play, just watching it in real time when he helped turn the double play.
The 8th inning one?
Yes. Okay. I did not think there was any chance in hell they had gotten the runner at first. Like, I thought
there were a bunch of those plays last night.
And when then they showed the replay, and I was like, stupid review. And then they showed the replay, and that might have been the closest play I've seen throughout this World Series in terms of how did you step on the bag, because that's going to make a difference about whether you were safe or not. There was at least 2 Rangers plays last night, the other one being the ricochet to Josh Young, that I was incredibly impressed that they were able to get the out, or in that other case, get both of the outs.
I'll tell you what Josh Young has done differently this year, and it's something very basic that you're taught, at an early age at first base, but you kind of start learning this at high school or maybe even college, is Nate Lowe would stretch too early last year. So he would put himself in a situation that if the ball wasn't thrown where he thought it was going to be thrown, he was stuck in his position. Once you stretch, once you step, you're done. You're locked out. That's where you're going to be, and you have only the range that you have. This year, he's stepping late to the ball, and you want to step late to the ball. So you want to see the ball out of the hand, and then you see where it's going, right, left, up, down, across, and then you step to the ball to give you the range that you need. And I feel like this year he's done a good job of getting to the base, getting ready for the throw, seeing the throw, and then stepping to where the ball is thrown to, where I felt like early in his Rangers career at times, he would see the ball hit, get to the base, and then start striding towards the shortstop without the shortstop really dictating where the ball is going yet. And so it's like, if this is offline, it's going to be tough for him to make any type of adjustment.
You know, there was a time, too, when Ezekiel Duran was playing third base, Kevin, and we were just like, what is going on over there, dude?
Nick Solak.
Yes.
It's Solak. I mean, look, go back to second base a couple of years. Odor made routine plays look like they were the most difficult thing. And our infield right now is making difficult plays look routine, like they do it all the time.
Or like we would watch Nomar Mazara, Rugi would have to run into the outfield to go catch shallow fly balls. Now you don't even notice it because Adolis, who's usually out there,
yeah.
he would just run and he'd catch that ball. Mazara couldn't get to that ball. That's one of the reasons, not the only, that's one of the reasons Mazara's out of Major League Baseball. Is like he can't cover any ground, but you don't know any better when you're watching and you see a ball fall in, you just assume that's a hit. But then when you watch a guy like Garcia play and you're like, oh, those balls are actually catchable and not like tough catches. As long as you just run through it, like you're going to get to that spot and make the play. So the Rangers in the last 2 to 3 years have slowly but considerably changed their defense.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. I have one more question kind of with this in mind, and I'm not kidding about this. Do you think, especially with Evan Carter right now being in left field, I realize that the future could change that, at every position they have at least an average, if not above average defensive player?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a necessity whenever you're at this level, when you're at this point. You make the windows to get hits smaller. You make it more difficult on them, and you put, whenever you have an Aroldis Chapman moment, you have the ability to get out of that because of your defense. I mean, I will credit Jared Sandler for this a lot because he constantly talked about how good the Astros defense was throughout their run, and even early on in their run, he was just like, man, their defense is just superior to most teams around the league. And Carlos Correa and Altuve were a great combination up the middle. And
Bregman was a shortstop playing third.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I mean that's fine, but as you're watching it at this level, this is a different thing whenever you're during regular season. When you're at this point, it's the I mean, just think about our history. One play, a defensive play, was the entire change of the history of the Texas Rangers.
Yeah, you're right about that.